I'm Izzy.
And I'm Jessica.
And welcome back to part 2 of the greatest
genre.
This is your spoiler section for
Episode 7.
Where we will be dissecting chapters 32 through 36 in all of their spoiler glory.
Yes.
For
the
ACOTAR.
entire mass verse is on the table.
Oh, yeah.
And hopefully if you're listening to this portion of the episode, you know what that means.
So that means if you have not read further than chapter 36, proceed at your own risk.
Yes.
This is your warning.
You should continue to read, but if you have not read Crescent City or Throne of Glass, and if you have not read past chapter 36 of A Court of Thorns and Roses, I'm so sorry I cannot advise you to listen anymore.
But I am very jealous of you because I wish I could also read it all for the first time again.
Correct. All right, you've been warned.
You have. I just want to do a quick reminder of our Instagram, which is
Come
at
on, guys,
the
you know the drill.
greatest genre. Twitter at the greatest genre. Twitter is at greatest genre. TikTok is the greatest genre, and you can email us at thegreatestgenre@gmail.com. I think that is everything. And then on YouTube, obviously, if you like visual aids, we do have a couple of those this episode.
Yes. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel.
And with that, should we dive right in?
Let's do it.
Again,
Let's do it.
final spoiler warning. Leave if you have not read ahead. Ah!
Okay. So we have an exciting entryway into our spoiler section today.
Yes.
We got a question from one of our listeners, Cori, and she commented on our last YouTube episode. And she had an awesome question that I'm really excited to talk to you about. So she said, do you imagine all of the courts to have different accents?
And initially, my thought was I just imagined them all to be English.
That's because you're English.
And I just feel like in the fantasy
because you're
genre...
an imperialist? Colonialist?
Okay, to be clear, I am both English and American. But the more I thought about it, I was thinking, at least I would think English for the spring.
English, yes. So I feel like I picture spring, autumn, winter for sure having
English
accents.
So what about for the night court? Do you visualize it as English or American or something else? I kind of thought of, and I know it makes no sense, but for some reason, I just think of Vivian and Calais as having Irish accents.
Oh, I like that.
And I have no idea why. Maybe because the Irish are...
Or like Scottish, maybe?
Could the Night Court have a Scottish accent?
No.
I think they're American.
You think Cassian has a Scottish accent?
Maybe. Jamie Fraser has a Scottish accent.
Does he look like Cassian?
They're both rather muscular.
Jamie Fraser is a ginger.
So does the Autumn Court have Scottish accents?
They could maybe have Irish because they're redheaded.
What about... Okay.
But the Autumn Court is so... I actually picture the Autumn Court being kind of... Like, I picture their castle being sort of like German or like Austrian. Do you know the kind of architecture style I'm talking about? We can throw some fan art as well because I have a couple saved.
Oh, I like that.
Do you know what else? I feel like the Winter Court could be kind of Scandinavian.
Oh yeah.
Almost like
you know,
Viking.
I could think of them. Oh,
this is so fun, Cori. Thank you for this question. This is awesome.
They have like their native tongue,
yeah,
but they speak with kind of like a Norwegian or a Swedish lilt.
Yes.
I like that. An
Yes.
ancient tongue, if you will.
God, we love an ancient tongue.
Okay, so what about
in
day,
both
dawn,
literally and
figuratively? Day, dawn, and summer. Summer is just giving the Caribbean for me. It's right on the water.
You said this, and I love because I was originally thinking like West African. But
that's more day court for me.
So SJM has said. And this is a quote from her, that when she imagines Helion, she imagines a beautiful Persian man.
Yes. Ooh, like.
So day court for me is a little bit more Arabic, Middle Eastern, maybe Northern African.
It's giving Sartok a
I
little bit.
can't
I know you can't
about
talk
that
about
right now.
It's a
I'm
problem.
upset that you just did that to me. That was a low blow. Anyways.
What about, okay, but Dawn, I cannot place. I think it's because it's the court that we perhaps know least about.
That's true. We've had the least exposure to
the only thing we know about the Dawn Court is that they host the High Lords meeting in Akawar. Like, Thesson is...
I could see it being, like, Far East, maybe.
Oh, I like that.
You know, because they're healers, right? That's their
Yes.
thing. And that makes me think of, like, Eastern medicine, like, holistic practices.
Oh, yeah, I can see that.
It would be really cool if their architecture was more like East, like, Japanese, maybe, or even, like, Nepal.
I can't remember what the day...
I can't remember their physical descriptions.
No, sorry, not the day
right
court.
now.
The Dawn court. I know that Feyre is like, this is freaking stunning.
Right.
When she goes.
No, it seems just very, and like, right, like the clouds, like all those mountains over there in Asia, and like.
It's almost like Nepal or something.
That's,
like
I'm kind of thinking of Nepal.
What a fun game.
This is great. I could do this for another
all
hour.
day. This is where you and I get into trouble because next thing we know, it's 1 a.m. and we have to be at the office at 9 a.m.
Okay, but we have to,
what other
so
night?
The Spring Court is English.
Like,
and
it's just a fact.
So the Autumn Court could maybe be Irish.
Listen, I find the Irish accent to be a problem, as you well know. And so I can get behind Lucian with an Irish lilt.
Oh my God. I need a moment. But it's not ready for you to do that.
The AC down 1 more degree.
We're like 5 minutes in. Oh my God.
Just 1 degree.
I did it there.
Every episode now, just turn the AC down a degree. It's a problem. Strong-jawed high-fae men, man. Males, sorry.
Males. So here's the thing. So for the night court, right, we've done everybody else. Yes.
I just don't know. Maybe.
Here's the thing. I did always think that I wanted them to have English accents.
No, they don't.
But then I heard the audio clip that's been circulating on social media, like the sound of the AI British
I think the Night Court has American accents.
Doing Reese saying, "Hello, Feyre, darling," and it's just wrong. It's
no,
just wrong.
I agree with you, actually. And I can't tell you why I agree with you, but I agree with you. And I think that they have American accents in the Night Court.
I think I hear that too. And I
I
feel
think-
like,
and I think the
feel
reason
like
is-
we are going to be in the minority. I don't think people are going to.
But you know what I think it is, at least for you, it's what you're familiar with, and that's where the majority of the story takes place for the rest of this,
And
right?
there's just something
So
about.
there's a reason about. Yeah.
Hello, Feyre, darling. Like with that darling. I don't know. And I cannot picture Cassian and Azriel with English. I
can picture Cassian with a Scottish accent, to be clear.
What are you
I can't
about?
picture Azriel with one at all. I find the Scottish accent to be very sexual.
Cassian is like very distinctly olive-skinned with very dark hair.
I know. He almost looks like he belongs in the day court.
Yes. But was that
Wings. At Convertible Ryan.
Ryan.
That one's for you, Cara. Sorry, I don't have wings. Okay, we digress. Because we actually should probably get into the spoilers for chapters 32.
We probably should, but Cori, thank
36.
you so much for that question. That was so fun.
It brought us so much joy.
That was great. For anyone, and if that could help anyone with their casting, their fan cast ideas.
Help us. We need aid.
Help us help you. We're trying to put together something really fun for fan casting at the
And
end
it's
of
gonna
the
be
season.
so giggly, but only if you help us.
Yeah.
Okay.
So my first big note for the spoiler section is Hybern's Unholy Spellbook,
which we see again in the end of Mist and Fury, right?
So my first question, I thought to myself.
Oh yes. Do paint the picture.
Upon rereading this, I thought to myself, Jessica, you know Sarah. Our good friend Sarah. Our good friend, our mother,
Who
our
does
queen.
not drop
Listen,
important books
she's
throughout
an author, okay? She's an author. So when she puts books in her story,
Now,
you pay
I forget,
attention.
is this one of the books that shows up in Crescent City, or is that the Book of Breathings?
It's the Book of Breathings. But let me tell you what I discovered on the internet
Oh,
last night.
tell me about the interwebs.
So I thought to myself,
Yes.
Are there any other references to an unholy or sacrilegious text in the Sarah J. Maas universe? Once again, I did some Googling, and apparently no one else has gone together and indexed references.
You've
to
got
all the
some
different
indexing to do, my God.
So apparently, once again, this is going to have to be me. But so here's what we know about about Hybern's unholy
Tell
spellbook.
me, I'm ready.
What we know is that at the end of ACOTAR, the Ator runs away back to Hybern, and the only thing he takes with it, is the book.
I do remember that. Mm-hmm.
So Hybern used the book, and I guess because he had this book, he discovered how to find the pieces of the cauldron and put it back together. Mm-hmm. Now, the Book of Breathings, which is a different book, was actually a book that was written by the species of beings many, 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 many years ago who actually feared the power of the cauldron, and they wrote this book as like a safeguard against it because it was designed to potentially allow them to neutralize the power of the cauldron if it ever became necessary.
And is the Book of Breathings, is that the one that is the half of another, like it's two halves of a whole?
And it gets an Amarin... Because they have to go take it from the summer court, and Amarin has to spend some time with it and kind of
decoding it and deciphering it. Exactly.
Correct, exactly. And so I was thinking about these two books, and it made me think of ancient Egypt and specifically the Mummy. How there is the Book of the Dead and the Book of Amun-Ra, the Book of Life. So they're almost these complementary texts, right?
God, I love Sarah J. Maas.
And
there's no way she didn't use that as some kind of inspiration.
So if the book, if Hybern's unholy spellbook, which is also what Amarantha is using to figure out how to sort of curb all of these High Lords' powers, and I love dissecting magic systems like this. It's so much fun.
Especially when the rules are consistent, when it's done well.
They're consistent.
SJM does such a good job of that. Like, she creates... Because this is a big topic in the fantasy genre as a whole. Like, if you're going to put magic...
It's what sets the fantasy genre apart, is that you have to have a magic system, and it has to have specific rules, and the good ones are the ones that all fall together and make sense.
What sets the good fantasy books above the rest is when you... create magic rules and you stick to them and you're consistent with them, and they don't let up even in the small moments of those
and they
books.
don't overpower the story, but they do shape the story, and it creates really exciting breakthroughs, and it creates mystery, and it's amazing. So I was thinking about these two books, and then I did a little there are more references to the Book of Breathings. So I started looking into that a little bit further. And of course, we know that the Book of Breathings appears in Crescent City in Joseba's library. However, it appears in Joseba's library covered in bound. In ACOTAR, it appears with three
blocks,
like rings, basically. A gold, silver, and a bronze. Before Feyre chucks in the cauldron.
Damn, I don't remember that. But
so it's
not what it helped.
It's interesting because it's obviously traveled, right? Through time and space. Not necessarily in the linear sense, but it has traveled through time and space, and it does appear in Joseba's library.
We haven't had any clues to... It has not showed up in Throne of Glass at all, has it? I don't think so.
Not that I know of,
Book of Breathings.
But we do know, right, that Amarin had to spend time with the Book of Breathings to decode it. Because
she knew she had to remember it almost. She was familiar somewhat.
So this is what I've picked up. I spent a lot of time on the A Court of Thorns and Roses wiki space on fandom. I read through some amazingly detailed Reddit threads, and there are definitely those within the SJM fandom who subscribe to the theory that the Book of Breathings was written in what is called the Holy Tongue, called the Leshon HaKadosh. And
quite a mouthful.
And that this holy tongue is actually word marks.
Oh, shit. Oh, no.
Right? Because Aelin had to spend time decoding and understanding word marks, and she had to teach them to Rowan. But these word marks, we know, carry power just being.
In the words themselves, almost.
And that is actually something that is very you find that a lot in
Like Egyptian culture as well.
Egyptian, but also Hebrew. Like words
Yes.
themselves are very, very powerful
And very holy.
And we know, and I looked it up. So Sarah J. Maas studied creative writing, and she also studied religions,
That would make a lot of
which
sense.
is incredible. I love that. And it is why I think these cultures and these histories and these magic systems that
weaves
she
them
weaves
so richly.
are so incredibly rich. So I had a lot of fun last night going down all of these rabbit holes about the Unholy Spellbook, the Book of Breathings, the Cauldron, and potentially the connection to the word marks that could exist here between all of these 3 series.
Amazing stuff. I'm gonna have to start researching the spoiler section with as much
But
detail as you do.
But I do really feel like Hybern's Unholy Book and the Book of Breathings are very similar to the Book of the Dead and the Book of Life in ancient Egypt.
And I also love that
and then the cauldron kind of sits in the center, right? Like it's that 3. Like there are these 2 books that balance each other out, and then the thing that it can be either manipulated for good or evil. Because if Hybern's Unholy Spellbook is also written in word marks, that would make sense of why he was able to put the cauldron back together. Right? I can just like imagine him carving the word marks on the pieces of the cauldron and having them come back together.
He's so
I can
evil.
just see it happening. So that's
Nicely
my bit.
done
Thank
about
you.
the book.
Thank you.
I also, just in a slightly simpler sense, I love that we get a reference to it in this book, and then it plays such a huge part, and not like it doesn't really play a big part in when we see it in Crescent City. It's more of a reference to the Book of Breathings
As of right now.
As of course, well, we don't. Who knows what's going to happen when
I'm not ready to talk about that either. I can't talk about that either.
I love that it's a little Easter egg as to what's going to happen
Exactly.
in this series itself.
Well, and I love that she was leaving clues for us before the end of Sky and Breath. She was leaving clues for us that these worlds
She's
were stacked
left
on top
clues
of-
for us in
I mean,
every
in
single
Silver
book.
Flames, Clotho is doing all the research about the worlds stacked on top of each other. I
course,
believe
yeah.
there's a reference to that in Throne of Glass as well. You have the Book of Breathings in
got
House
it
of
all.
Earth and Blood. Like they're all there. She is. Oh God, she's the best. I love
She
her
really
so
is.
much.
I guess we're not going linearly since we've gotten straight
Well, I
to the
have
book.
another. I know. I'm sorry. I was just really excited to talk about the book, and I had it first.
I'm impressed.
So I'm gonna rewind. You know how SJM does like heavy intense things and then she does funny things?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna do a funny thing.
Oh, amazing. I'm
okay,
ready.
great. So I ripped on Rhysand pretty hard last episode.
Yes.
And in order to be objective and fair, as a literary critic, shall we say,
Yes.
I'm gonna rip on Tamlin for a little bit.
Proceed.
Once again, I have to step in here, like, consistent with the feedback that I gave Rhys last episode, right? Like, you are losing the forest for the tree, the single tree, my guy.
I think I have exactly the same note. The
Like-
quote that I have written down is, he had put me before his entire court, before all of Prithian. And I think my note is, we have to check ourselves, because this is literally what we were angry about Rhysand for in the previous episode.
And this is why it's okay that I have strong opinions, because I am also willing to sometimes recant them.
Because and then
And I
forgive
don't
me,
recant, and I don't recant what I said
No,
about Rhys, but
wait.
I'm being fair here because.
Let me ask a question.
Okay.
Because it sounds like, reread the curse a little more intently than I did. If Tamlin is to become what Rhysand is, Amaranth's whore, basically, if he is to basically say, I will be your consort and lover, does that release his entire court and therefore all of Prithian from their current state?
No, it just means the masks come off, and he gets what Rhysand gets, which is a little bit more freedom. Her creatures aren't going to attack his court members. They can like live in the Spring Court. Like even if he becomes her lover, she's still the High Queen. She's not going to give him all of his powers back.
Okay, I misread that, and I thought that meant that the curse was broken.
No, because if he has all of his powers back, he's going to kill her.
Right. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that for me.
Sure. But still, my note remains, he and Rhysand have both really decided...
Everyone. Yeah.
Like, he and Rhysand have both still decided that Feyre is, like, way more important than, like, all of the other people that
Well, I think
depend
this
upon
also
them
goes,
for
and
protection.
listen, and we can't have it both ways. We can't sit there and say we love this idea of the high fame male
You're
that
correct.
burns the world down for you and that puts
You are
you
correct.
before every single person ever. And then when they do that in the book,
No. And I'm not saying. Listen.
You're objectively correct. It is not what a good leader would do.
I just want to state that I acknowledge for the record that if Prithian were in any way a democracy, I don't think that these guys' decisions would win them a re-election with their constituency.
Maybe they wouldn't even be in charge.
You know what I mean?
I don't know. I might, given
like-
what I find out about Reese in book 2, I might elect him. But I think I'd elect Feyre first.
Okay, but once again, I think I have just a lot of questions about the total population count of the Night Court.
So he always says that I had to make some very tough decisions very quickly because he laments in Mist and Fury that he only protected Velaris. He was like, I had seconds to decide what to do, and I decided to throw my shields up against Velaris, and it wasn't only those who were under the mountain that weren't protected. It was those who were in the sprawling lands of the Night Court.
I know.
basically.
I'm just wondering if there were a general election in the Night Court.
I think it also has something to do with Velaris has been a secret for 5,000 years.
Because apparently the Illyrians don't really like Rhys. Kerr and the Court of Nightmares don't really like Rhys. He's apparently the most powerful High Lord ever existed. And yet he's the only one who has to deal with this kind of insurrection?
Well, again, remember, they don't get a choice. The High Lord's power chooses you.
I understand, but I mean, there's at least some kind of element of the Dothraki, I would imagine, amongst the Illyrians where they respect and follow power.
Ooh, the Illyrians are kind of like the Dothraki.
I do. I kind of picture them like the Dothraki.
That.
Right? They respect and they follow power, survival of the fittest.
Yes.
It's a very cutthroat society. So I just find it hard to believe that he has to deal with all of these people who reject and refuse to respect his rule when he's the
But those in Velaris love him. We can get into it later when we talk more about Mist and Fury.
I know, we're so close to Mist and Fury now that it's starting to bleed over.
And then I also have a little note, and it isn't really a spoil. I mean, it is a bit.
Damn,
so,
I didn't mean to talk. I really wanted to. No, my point here is that Tamlin let his people down by sending Feyre away. And I just want to state that for the record.
Loud and clear, hearing you.
I do not condone.
I do, though, on the note of Tamlin.
As someone who is a constituent in general, in real life, I do not condone his actions.
And I feel like it's important to say, because Tamlin in the SJM fandom gets a ton of flack. Deservedly so. But also, you and I are amongst those who... You and I are amongst those that thinks he has...
This is how much longer we have to film this episode.
Okay. Who thinks that he does deserve a redemption arc. But I just have to say, to those of you who... we sometimes forget, as Alice was explaining what he had to go through over those years...
And what he did for her nephews when she showed up as a refugee.
Watching all of his friends, all of them, getting killed going over the wall... until there was hardly anybody left in his court. The weight that he must have had to bear. And listen, I'm the first to say, I am a Rhysand stan over Tamlin.
Rhysand, Phasand.
We stan.
Absolutely.
But rereading some of this is putting into perspective, again, not condoning what he does at the beginning of Mist and Fury and in other parts of the story.
Or the end of Mist and Fury.
For a lot of Mist and Fury.
Basically, the whole
series.
Book too.
It was very humbling for me, at least, to reread this and be he spent 50 years watching those he loved die. And
after growing up the way that he did with the father that he had.
Yes.
His father was chummy with Amarantha. That's why Alice says that Tamlin didn't want anything to do with her.
And remember that he actually did not trust her. And he was one of
Despite
the only
his
ones
environment,
who had the wherewithal to be what are you guys doing?
He wanted nothing to do with her.
So let's just remember that before everybody starts shitting on Tamlin.
And despite the environment that he grew up in, which was very much predisposed him to be a villain...
I would agree, yes.
He decided that's not who he wanted to be.
No, I totally agree, and I thought that it was worth mentioning.
Has he made big mistakes? Yes.
As we could
Do
argue,
I think they are
many of the characters in this book.
So does
none
everyone.
Of them are without,
So do you and
none
I.
of them are without fault.
No, and that is
what
what
makes them interesting.
took the words right out of my mouth.
Amazing. Glad we're aligned on this.
Amazing. I really hate it when we fight. I didn't like the last episode. I felt like we were fighting.
Okay, so my next note is just. Actually, do you want to do something serious until we do something funny?
Did we
Do you wanna do a
not
serious
just
one?
do something funny? Oh, do you have another funny?
I have a funny-ish.
Okay, go for it.
I need to talk about worm versus verm.
No, we're not there yet.
Okay, so
That's
you
at
go.
the end.
Okay, so
We're
you go
going
next.
linearly. So
Linearly,
yeah.
right? Okay, you go next.
Yeah. So Amarantha's powers, and we touched on this actually mostly during the non-spoiler discussion, but I do want to dive into some speculation here a little bit.
Ooh, great word.
And you mentioned something without me even planting the seed. So if you guys
So smart.
haven't listened to our spoiler-free section, you should, because Isabel was very astute.
I'm a very astute person. What can I say?
You said Amarantha was more like she seems more like a
witch. A witch.
witch.
She does. She wields spells.
And she seems to be very bloodthirsty, which we do from Throne of Glass know to be a very witchy
A trait of some certain
characteristic. Yeah. So the High Lords of Prythian have a magic that is very unique to each of them. It's very, very tied to their lands. It's a very special relation. It's like a give and take, right? Between their lands. It is almost like a bond.
It's a very deep connection.
It's a very deep connection, and it feels very organic, which is interesting because Feyre gets a taste, like a little drop of each of those powers when they resurrect her at the end of ACOTAR.
Again, just to be clear,
She does die.
Tamlin wasn't wrong.
But I wanted to see if you had any thoughts about how Amarantha and Hybern's powers are different, which is because it's interesting because they are the same race and species of creature.
Well, it's interesting that they
high
are
fae
technically geographically removed from Prythian.
From Prythian.
They're in the Republic of Ireland.
Don't talk about that. Oh my god, is Hybern the ones that have Irish accents?
No, I refuse to believe because the Irish are just
but Amarantha would be so good with an Irish accent.
Oh no. Shit. No, I loved this that she does have a very witchy vibe about her
Because she doesn't seem to have that organic, like she has power.
It's almost like she has like the lesser level power that the fairies have, or that like the members of a court would have.
See, it made me think of Dorian. Like Aelin has a very specific power tied to an element, right? Fire. Rowan has that very specific element, wind.
But not all of the
high fae
powers are elemental though.
Well, summer is water.
What is the night? Night? Darkness?
Well, I mean, some would say just Valg in general. Mind control darkness and manipulation.
But, okay, so if
but I'm just
Amarantha
saying,
was to be thinking of
Amarantha's-
her as having a witch like powers.
But her power, no, she does have power, but it's not as formed. Like, do you know what I'm trying to say? It's more raw, it's more malleable, and it's almost like she needs a conductor.
It's almost like
she
a
needs
siphon, like what the Illyrians have.
Like she needs these spells. She needs something to give it form and direction.
It's like the way that Amryn describes a siphon, when it's like if you were to throw a bucket of paint at a wall or use a paintbrush, she needs something to actually channel her powers.
And that made me think of Dorian's power. Like when it begins, it's just this raw, unpredictable, uncontrollable burst that comes from him.
Right.
And he has to learn how to shape it and form it and control it. And so I just found it interesting that those from Hybern do not have that organic form
connection
to their magic.
No, I really like that.
that the High Lords of Prythian do. And it's the division.
And it's interesting because it almost seems to me like it's less powerful than what the High Lords have, yet Hybern harbors so much power.
It's so much raw power,
exactly.
but he needs tools. He needs the book.
Exactly.
He needs the cauldron. And the High Lords, it almost seems, it's like they've generationally honed and curated the power.
They don't necessarily have the organization that Hybern has.
Right.
No, I that's a really great point, Jess. I like that a lot. I don't have an answer for you.
It wasn't necessarily a question. It was just
an observation.
It was something that I was thinking about.
Witchy power.
I'm a night owl. Dangerous things happen to me when I work on this stuff late into the night.
Into the dregs of Reddit.
Yes.
Oh no.
We have to talk about Lucian's powers.
Oh my god.
I totally missed this the first time around.
Me too. Okay, but I have a question. The healing powers are those that belong in the Dawn Court.
Well, if you would let me say what I was going to say.
Okay, sorry.
Okay. Took the wind out of my sails a little bit.
But he's of the day and the autumn.
Okay, so spoiler, in case you didn't already know, listening to this part of the podcast. Lucian's dad is Helion.
And we need the Helion Lady Autumn novella.
We're going to talk about it more next episode because we meet Lady Autumn. And I reread, it's like 2 sentences, and I reread them like 19 times because I'm so obsessed with this tiny little micro offset of the story.
So on brand for you.
Anyways, so when Lucian came down, and all of a sudden I realized he was healing her, and I was like, wait a minute. I was like, where does the healing power come from? Hold on.
Did you do some research?
I did. So I was like Hermione Granger. So I went to the library. Google. So he does wield firepower, but that is actually, it turns out, just as much from his mother's side as Baron's. Because Baron married Lucian's mother because her family was so ancient.
She was a
very powerful.
A titled old family.
She was very powerful. Old money. And when we say old money in Prythian, we mean old magic. Mm-hmm. Old power. So his firepower comes from his mother's line, but this healing ability is not something that is typically associated with the Autumn Court. So I will read to you Helion's power in Sarah J. Maas verse.
Oh my god, I'm ready.
Is described as a golden white healing light. And when Lucian is in the cell with Feyre, there is this white kind of glowing orb over his shoulder as he heals her. And another part of this property...
God, thank you for saying that, because I always think of Helion as like spell cleaver.
So another part of this property, like that is the way his power is visually described. Visually described, which is a very similar visual description that we get of Lucian's power in the cell. And now knowing what I know, reading that again, I was like, how did we not pick up on this? Anyways, I told you I was going to bump into this. And then another property of this power, of Helion's power, is to seamlessly cut through magical wards and enchantments, which has given him the term spell cleaver.
Okay, that is always where my mind goes when I first think of
Yes.
Decor powers.
So that was my little nugget takeaway from there. That was our first clue from Sarah. But
also, again, like, 10 out of 10 Volution. Being the one.
I've said it once
seems to
already
save the day.
in episode 7. I do not understand, as Feyre, how you're not switching sides at this point. However, so also just a little side note. Mm-hmm. I, the entire time, imagined this affair between Helion and Lady Autumn happening when he was High Lord, but he wasn't. Because Helion's father was one of the High Lords that Amarantha
killed.
Murdered while they were all under the mountain. Callias's father, Helion's father.
Fessin? No, Tarquin.
And Tarquin's father.
I thought it was 4 of them.
No, it's
she's
3.
Floated, she's floated. Okay,
3.
she's floated 3.
Day, winter, and summer. They were the only High Lords, apparently, that had the balls enough to try to band together and overthrow. They tried to call for aid from the other fairy realms.
Sorry, say it again. Winter,
summer, and day. So Callias.
One of the solar quartz, 2 of the solar quartz, and 1 of the seasonal quartz. All
2
right.
seasonal, 1 solar. Winter, summer.
Oh, right. I thought day. Thank you. Appreciate you.
It's okay. So for you, does that make it more hot or less hot?
That
That
he
they were
wasn't-
having an affair before
that he
was
was or
High
wasn't.
Lord?
I
At
think it makes
first-
it equally hot just knowing that it's
At first, I
Helion.
thought it was less hot, and then I was like, no, it doesn't.
It's Helion. The man
He's
oozes
just-
sexuality.
Hot. He's just lust incarnate.
Yes, a problem. Probably,
huge
actually, the
problem.
most problematic of all the High Lords.
I agree. Put that finger away. We also know,
Yes.
excuse me, that Lucian can winnow.
Can he?
He vanishes into thin air out of Feyre's cell.
But I thought that later on in the books, he's not able to winnow. He has
Well-
to get carried.
Well, I don't know.
Maybe it's
Because Feyre says he
inconsistency.
vanishes into thin air, just like very similarly to how she describes Rhys disappearing.
I'll have to do some research on that one because I could have sworn that later on he isn't. Maybe he is. I can't remember. I thought that he had to get carried at certain times because he.
He definitely does, but I think that's just because he can't get to the House of Wind because
You can't winnow into the House of Wind. Maybe that's it. Oh, very tough. Very tough.
Who cares?
Solution.
I can't remember. Is it
Asriel?
That's so insulting
I
to Rhys.
know.
Lucian
It's
deserves so much
upsetting.
better.
I had just a couple of notes during Feyre's time under the mountain. You start to see her immediately taking on the responsibility and the guilt, especially when she sees Claire Bedor, and she starts right off the bat putting it all on herself, and you kind of begin to see the beginnings of what she's going through at the beginning of Mist and Fury with her depression and her guilt and just all of the emotions that weigh so heavily on her in those chapters. And
Because she's so survival mode under the mountain. And there's no room. Again, it's like she's reverting back to that version of herself
I think
that
there's
she was
even
at
a
the
line,
beginning.
Jess, when she references that useless and stupid part of her mind when she sees something I don't even remember what it is down there. It's under the mountain, and she sees like a glimpse of something beautiful.
Is it when he sends the music? When she
Maybe.
hears the music?
No, it's not the music because it's in these 5 chapters. And she immediately starts thinking of that part of her mind again as useless because it's not going to help her survive, which is a theme that we see at the beginning of Mist and Fury. So just you begin to see the beginnings of that. Small note that I had, Rhys loves his people enough to whore himself out for Amarantha. Why can't Tamlin? It's not quite the same situation, but there are some similarities there. And then I just have another note that
that's a fair note.
like
That's a fair note.
and again, we have notes about the way that Rhys doesn't protect all of his court. Again, I was recently rereading some of Mist and Fury.
I have questions.
Yeah, questions. He, to quote him directly, had to make some really tough decisions really quickly, and he does have regrets about who he was and wasn't able to protect. But
And I think the difference, I mean, yeah, Tamlin is just sitting there doing nothing. And I think it's because he has resigned himself to his failure, which is what he
to his
always
fate.
really believed, I think, was
Yes.
going to happen anyway.
and I think Feyre acknowledges that down the line. She goes, I think that he did just think that it was already a lost cause.
Yeah.
He
And
didn't fight.
again, going back to we talked about this briefly last episode, I think. It's sad that he can't find that courage within himself to believe that he could overcome
Or that he
for
deserves
her.
it, yeah.
Or that he
deserves
deserves
something
like-
fighting for, you know?
Yeah. So it is sad, but it is also still at the end of the day, unfortunately, reprehensible.
Yes, and again, we are not the ones being held under a mountain against our will. with
But I
no
have
powers.
to believe, knowing myself, that I would be a little bit more like Lucian and a little bit less
just
like
try to do
At
something.
the very least, I'm going to be indignant.
And then also just have to...
We have
Feyre just immediately does all 3 of the things that Alice says not to do.
no, she definitely does.
Like,
Yeah.
100
Almost in order. Like, don't trust your senses. Don't make
drink.
bargains with anybody.
Don't drink fairy wine.
Don't
That's
drink the
1,
wine.
2, and 3 right off the bat. Although Risan definitely encouraged her to do the fairy wine pot.
Wait.
And then should we discuss? Oh, I was gonna say I'm at the riddle. Where are you?
I'm at the brothers.
Okay, you go for the brothers. You go
Okay,
first.
I just have to say,
Yes.
Eris is hot.
Yeah.
That's my controversial take. There it is. I'm sure it's not the only one, but that's my controversial take of today. Eris
Listen.
is hot. The
And you
Vansera
can-
boys can get it. They are like super hot, super scary Weasley twins. Give them instruments. Put them in a boy band. I'll be their first groupie. I'm into it.
I'm interested to see what Eris's story has left to yield because
Girl, we
do
already
not know
We
everything there is to know
what it
about him.
Eris is morally gray. Eris is morally gray.
I think his brothers
Say
are not,
no
especially
more.
I think his brothers, especially the dead ones, perhaps not.
I think Eris has been playing 4D chess for a long time.
A long time. I'm excited.
Hot.
Okay, can we talk about the riddle now?
Yeah.
And about how you and I immediately
Oh my
knew the
god!
answer
I
was
was like,
love.
well, obviously it's love,
I
but like
remember I could
obviously
sit
it's
and
not
text
love
you
because
and-
I was like, that's so obvious.
So for those of you that don't know, Jess read this book before I did, then she immediately gave it to me.
I think I read it on the plane ride back from California.
I read it in one day when I was really hungover. I remember reading this and deciding not to text Jessica in case it was super embarrassing that I was wrong. Because as soon as I read the riddle, I was like, well, this is obviously love, isn't it? Obviously. I feel like Severus Snape. Obviously.
Okay, but now we know that Amarantha was like
I missed that the first read around because I was barreling through it.
We were like the worm.
Oh, no.
Barreling
Don't
and
compare me
twisting
to the
through.
Midden God them. Oh no! But then once she's defogged, you don't think that?
Listen,
I'm not in a high stress situation while reading this. So
Amarantha did say if you get it wrong,
then everyone dies, right?
everybody
Something along those
is
lines.
fucked. So that alone would make me pretty hesitant to
take
answer
pause.
the riddle. I would probably take my chances.
Fair enough. I guess it was more like I didn't know if SJM
I would
wanted
wait,
us
I would
to be
wait until I was
confused.
dumped into the worm shit pit.
And then you'd be like,
And then
I
would like to submit an answer. Thanks.
But I guess it was more like maybe not if Amarantha gave a complicated riddle, but if SJM was giving us did you think that what she was giving us was confusing?
I actually don't.
You think that she knew that we would all be like love?
I do.
Okay, well, thank fuck because
No, I do.
No, I do. I do.
I agree.
Oh, thank God. I mean, it's so funny. Now when I hear riddles under a mountain in the depths,
What has it got in its pockets?
I think Gollum.
Yeah.
And I think Bilbo.
That's the best one. I also think of Goblet of Fire and the Sphinx.
Oh,
in
the
maze.
Sphinx. You know, when I was hosting trivia a couple weeks ago, someone came up and they recited the entire riddle to me
Did
for
you
an
give
extra
them
point.
bonus points?
I sure did.
Amazing.
I'm a huge Harry Potter fan, and I can't give you any of those lines. It's very impressive. I know.
Was it a man or a woman?
It was a woman, obviously. Obviously. Okay, and then just read us briefly.
Yeah.
Must discuss the worm.
I'm so sorry
And-
I have to stop you one last time.
Why?
Because...
I just want to talk about the spelling inconsistencies.
Okay, fine. We can talk about the worm.
She says the Midden God worm. Well, the word Midden God only comes once, but she describes it as a worm, as pink and brown and
Fleshy?
I don't actually know if she uses the word fleshy, but it's
Well,
gross.
it is an invertebrate, so it is in fact
Yes.
entirely flesh.
Surging and twisting with horrific ease.
Surging,
Pinkish brown
that's
body.
the word.
Ew, ew,
There
ew.
it is.
But it's spelled worm every single time, and I searched this WORM.
In book one.
In book one, it is
Avatar.
spelled worm, WORM, like an earthworm. And then I went because I know that they reference.
I wish I had known that you have a phobia of worms before I reread this book.
Are you joking? I feel like we've definitely had this conversation.
joking?
I feel like we've definitely had this
Did I
conversation.
just arrived
my
on the island? Are you
only
joking?
phobia in the world is earthworms.
That's your only phobia.
Yeah.
is your only one.
Like my body has like a visceral reaction.
I have several of those, but
We
that's
don't
for
need to.
another time.
Okay. I know that they reference this event trial multiple times in Mist and Fury.
if
So I went to the
you
second book and I said,
encountered a
okay, no, we don't need to
boggart,
talk
would
about
it be an earthworm?
Most likely.
Interesting.
Like a really big one.
Oh
Not
my
unlike
God.
the Midden-God.
Okay, well, a really big earthworm is scary. A tiny earthworm is not
It was
scary.
almost worse, and there are like a lot of them. Anyway.
Oh,
we digress.
a boggart for you would be like...
Oh, you, Jessica, actually, please don't. I can't even, don't make hand gestures. My blood pressure is rising.
Okay, I'm stopping.
So, in the second book, I went back to find references to the Midden-God worm.
Yeah.
But I couldn't find any. And then I realized it's
Because
spelled
you typed
W-Y-R-M in the next one.
Okay, that, in my opinion, that's on the editor.
Maybe it's like a change of mindset for
No.
Feyre.
That's on the editor. When you're talking about grammar
Because
and spelling consistencies, that is on the editor.
Because I gotta say, it really changed how I visualized it.
Well, yeah, because in lore, in traditional fantasy
I'm reading
lore,
Priory the Orange right now.
a
It's
worm,
spelled W-Y-R-M.
W-Y-R-M.
It's like a dragon with no legs. Ladies and gentlemen, your fantasy readers.
Yeah. Yes, a worm. So, for those of you who did not beg your mothers to buy you the dragon lore
Your required reading.
hardcover book from Barnes & Noble, there are many classifications of creatures that fall under the very large umbrella of dragonoid beings. And the worm is basically like the most basic of those creatures. So if you're talking about a worm spelled W-Y-R-M, you are talking about a dragon with no wings and no legs. Mm-hmm. But it moves like a snake. It's very big. It is scaled.
Still
it is
has scaly.
spiked. It has
Very sharp teeth.
Pointed face, sharp teeth. Very vertebrate.
Yes.
A worm, spelled W-O-R-M, is a fleshy, surging, brownish, pinkish, squishy
With no spine.
thing.
Ew.
I don't know what else.
So-
I don't know what that makes other people think about, but
Can you not?
I won't.
Okay. So that was just my only note about worm versus verm. And I'm talking about W-Y-R-M as verm.
Vum.
Yes. Just moving forward.
I always sort of read it as like worm.
Another note about the first trial in Mist and Fury in chapter 54. Well, Reese
Oh my
is
God,
telling
yes,
when
yes,
Reese
yes,
is
yes.
telling his
Wait,
story
this is
about
my
when he
final-
felt like when he goes, the moment I fell in love with you. Oh no, I guess it's after their coupling. He goes, is the moment you threw that bone at Amarantha after
No, he
defeating
said it was the moment you gave me the middle finger.
No, it was throwing the bone, I think.
I
Whatever
think-
it was.
I think it's when she gave the middle finger because he says, you reminded me so much of Cassian. in that
Well, I
moment."
can imagine him saying, if you don't marry her, I will.
And I do have a note here that says, it has to be true love if he falls for you while you are covered head to toe in worm shit.
Worm poo.
Yes. So
Gross.
So
Ew.
moral
10 out
of
of
the
10.
story.
Yuck.
Moral of the story: don't settle, ladies. Get you and our gentlemen. Get you somebody
Hang on.
who still thinks you are the shit when you are
Oh,
covered
you're so...
in shit.
Jessica, you're right. I just found it. The moment I fell in love with you,
I'm sorry, what was it?
I realized you were cleaving those bones to make a trap for the Midden-God, them. Or maybe the moment you flipped me off for mocking you. It reminded me so much of Cassian.
Sin.
For the first time in decades, I wanted to laugh. I hate when you're right and I'm wrong.
Well, I hate it when you're right and I'm wrong, so I
Okay.
guess that's why we're friends. Okay, so I have one final note
amazing.
about, while we're talking about Feyre, because actually my final note was, get you a man who thinks you're the shit when you're covered in shit. But we've gone out of order, and that's okay. I did want to talk quickly about when Feyre gives Amarantha her name, and Amarantha says, an
Yes.
old name from
Yes.
our earliest dialects, which I totally disregarded the first time that I read it. But given the conversations that we've had, I actually kind of clung onto this a little bit, and I thought it was very, very, very noteworthy that Amarantha recognizes Feyre's name. She's heard it before. It's
Amarantha
significant to her.
How old is Amarantha?
Amarantha is
She's
old.
She's
older
500.
than Rhys.
Yeah, because she was a general, and he was young in those wars. Tamlin was a child.
Tamlin wasn't even fighting yet. So the fact that she says an old name from our earliest dialects. Now remember that Amarantha does not see human beings anywhere near. Like when she says our, she's talking about the Fae. So going back to the speculations that you and I have shared with each other.
Yes.
About Feyre's parentage. We've talked about potentially the connection between Feyre's mother and Prithian and really like the Fae.
Yes. No, there is something that we do not know about Feyre's mom.
Right, but the first conclusion that we explored was that Feyre's mother could be Fae or half Fae. But there's another side of that where it's possible that Feyre, and I'm going to include Nesta in this, just because
they have different
the
characteristics.
Same color eyes, and they are a little bit stronger, a little bit colder, a little bit edgier, a little bit savvier. Elaine seems to be the only one of the three that actually has a relationship with their father. Feyre notes multiple times that Elaine has their father's eyes. Mm-hmm. She's the only one that does. So I just want to throw the option out there that Feyre and Nesta could have been fathered by
somebody else.
Someone who is not, in fact, Papa Archeron.
Jessica, was that last night while you were in the depths of the internet? Was that a Jess original?
No, I mean this is something that the fandom has discussed.
That's wild.
When you mentioned the mother, I can't actually find most people I think subscribe to the fact that Feyre's mother had an affair of some kind
with a fae,
or a demi-fae. And that is why...
Do demi-fae exist in Prithian?
I don't know.
We don't. We only get reference to them in Throne of Glass.
I don't know, but I do believe... Because Elaine had such a rougher transition than Nesta, too, into becoming fae.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Elaine mourns her humanity.
Yeah, and Nesta...
So much more than Nesta. Nesta and Feyre really don't. But Elaine does. And Elaine has this very strong connection with their father. And she has this very strong connection with the earth, with all things that are seasonal and delicate and finite. Like, I think Elaine was always truly immortal. I think it makes more sense to me.
It's timeless.
It makes more sense to me that Nesta and Feyre would have had something in their blood that was immortal all along.
That made that transition easier. That's a great point. I like that.
So that was another little
tidbit
that I came across. It does also make sense to me that Amarantha would be so singularly focused on what is literally before her that she would not think, why does this human have such an ancient fae name?
Also, if you just think about it, Feyre, Nesta, never names I've heard before. Elaine.
Well,
Elaine.
Let's not forget. Elaine being
an
an
anagram
for Aelin haunts me
most nights
to this day. I'm very, 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 very interested to see how that plays out, if that plays out,
and if it means anything at all. Because I feel like SJM also throws us some red herrings sometimes.
But I'm really excited to get into Mist and Fury, particularly the end of Mist and Fury, because when Nesta and Elaine go into the cauldron, it's such different experiences.
I'm excited to read about Nesta and Elaine knowing everything that we know now.
Yes.
And deep diving.
It was just such a different experience for them being made, because the cauldron reacts so differently to the two of them. And it just makes sense to me. There's something about Nesta and Feyre having a different father than Elaine that just makes sense to me.
I agree. I think that's a great note.
I guess we'll end on that sort of
I think that's a great
ellipses.
I think it's a great ending. We're right at the hour mark. So
perfect.
Thank you, if you are still with us, so much. We appreciate you more than you could ever know.
Spoiler section yet.
That was a great one. Thank you so much. A reminder to please follow us and subscribe on Spotify, and Apple Podcasts and YouTube. You've heard the handles, so I don't think I have to.
We're not going to do
Yeah.
it to you again. But yes, please follow and subscribe. And please send us your feedback. Please send us your theories.
Yeah.
Send us links to Reddit threads that you love. Send us your fan art. Send us your fan cast suggestions. We are holding out hope for the show.
Totally. And
It can
a
happen.
new request, if you so feel like it, if you choose to leave a review, that does huge things for us. And we really, really appreciate it. Give us
And share us on your socials.
Yeah, no, and
Spread
we
the
would
word
love,
about
we
the
would love it
great
so
genre.
much. Now that I know we have a link tree as of about 20 minutes
Yes,
ago.
it is literally the link in our bio is our link tree. So you can
So
find
I am hoping that at the end of this
everything you need
week,
there.
you will have an order form where you can get your own Greatest Genre T-shirt.
Aren't
so
you wearing
can,
yours?
I am. You can rep the pod and the Greatest Genre.
And if there is, an overwhelming response, we might have other merch as well someday.
Who knows? All right. Thank you guys so much. We've had so much fun.
This has been the greatest genre.
We will see
We
you
love you.
next time.